Hey there, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Unpacking the Backpack. I can't even tell you what episode this is. I figure that out once I'm done recording and go back and look on Spotify. But I'm glad you are here. And, if I'm sounding a little bit under the weather, yeah, I got flu A. Quick story, I even had the flu shot this year. But I guess flu A is a little pesky, so being in schools and on planes all the time, I guess I was bound to get sick. So if I sound a little under the weather, don't worry, I'm recovering. So, what are we going to talk about today? I love talking about efficacy. And, efficacy in simple form is we have our goals, we have our ideas, but do we follow through? And is there actual evidence of impact, change? So today, I kind of just want to talk about, how do we ensure efficacy in what we do? And organizations, schools, districts that are successful all lead with efficacy in mind. The same can be said for teachers and administrators who can effectively implement ideas and strategies in ways that result in improved learner outcomes. To put it simply, everybody, efficacy can best be defined as the degree to which set goals are achieved. Don't you like that simple definition? No word salad, no pie in the sky. The degree to which set goals are achieved. And that's what I want you to think about as you're listening to this. Even if you zone out on what I'm saying, think about what you have set as an individual goal, as a team goal, as a school goal, and how do you measure that progress? And when it's all said and done, how do you determine if improvement was reached? So the path to achieving efficacy begins with a belief in oneself. Albert Bandura is one of the most famous researchers in the area of self-efficacy, which can be best described as an individual's belief in his or her capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. To put it bluntly, if people don't believe in themselves, then achieving goals will be near impossible. Thriving cultures focus on empowerment, support, feedback, and autonomy to take risks to build self-efficacy. How do you do that as an administrator? How do you do that as a coach? How do you do that as a teacher? If we want success to breed success, we have to create the conditions for others to believe in their own actions, because it's those individual actions that will lead to the collective experiencing success. So the next logical step after self-efficacy is to move from an individual belief to one that is embraced by the majority. This is referred to as collective efficacy, which Bandura defined as a group's shared belief in its conjoint capability to organize and execute the courses of action required to produce given levels of attainment. And that goes back to 1997. And that's when I graduated college. All right, I digress. It cannot be overstated how much this element contributes to student achievement. And, meta-analysis research has proven this time and time again. And meta-analysis studies related to collective efficacy and achievement in education demonstrated that the beliefs teachers hold about the ability of the school as a whole are strongly and positively associated with student achievement across subject areas and in multiple locations. The research has been positioned collective efficacy at the top of the list of factors that influence student achievement. That really comes directly tied to Hattie's work. According to Visible Learning, based on a synthesis of more than 1,500 meta-analyses, collective teacher efficacy is 3 times more powerful and predictive of student achievement than socioeconomic status. It is more than double the effect of prior achievement and more than triple the effect of home environment and parental involvement. It is also greater than 3 times more predictive of student achievement than student motivation, concentration, persistence, and engagement. So, where am I going with this? Understanding the critical role of self and collective efficacy play in determining the successful attainment of goals lays out a path for achieving efficacy as a whole. Something that I expand greatly on my book, Digital Leadership, if you are so interested. Achievement is important, but there are many other facets of school culture that can be improved. And, I'll put this in the show notes. One of the things that I create, I love, as you know, if you listen to this podcast, I love creating images. The brain processes images a lot faster than text, makes complex issues a little more digestible. And in the strategic planning cycle, image, I kind of start with questions. And the first question that kind of forms at 11 o'clock of the image is, how can we improve? We should never stop asking that question. Next, where do we want to go? How do we get there? How do we measure success? How did we do? And embedded in that, after we think about how we can improve, we got to form goals. Where do we want to go? That leads to desired outcomes. How we get there? The strategies that we're going to implement with fidelity. How do we measure success? These are the measures and targets, the benchmarks that we put in place. How did we do? An analysis of the results. To get back to how can we improve? Begin with the end in mind, the goals, while aligning to a shared vision and collective mission. It is then essential to determine specific outcomes, strategies, and measures and targets. Professional learning, funding, and an array of other supports are crucial to not only stay on the path, but also to arrive at the intended destination. The final piece to this puzzle is the results, which can be determined through both qualitative and quantitative means. It cannot be overstated that in the end, it's the degree to which goals have been achieved that ultimately leads to efficacy. This strategic planning process that I described, that I use with many schools, districts, organizations across the world, does provide a logical path forward. But there are also many other elements that come into play. When we think about that, it's really interesting for me to really look at the facets of change. For anyone that has led change efforts from, the school level, the classroom level, district level, I think you're going to be likely to relate to the following. So, what are other things that we have to consider when it comes to achieving efficacy? Number 1, questions should lead to more questions. Questions provide context for where we want to go, how we'll get there, and whether or not success is achieved. Having more questions than answers is a natural part of the initial change process. Consider the following questions. Where do you want to go? How will we get there? How will we measure success? How did we do? How can we improve? We should always look to not having the answers right away, because the answers are going to be different depending on context. So as you are looking to build for efficacy, think about the questions and how that might lead to more. Number 2, research fuels the why. Having a foundation and a compelling reason to change is where research plays a pivotal role. It provides a baseline as to what has been found to really work when it comes to student learning and improving culture. We can look to the past in order to inform current practice. If efficacy is the goal, embracing a scholarly mindset to inform and influence our work, not drive it, is critical. Hey, my opinion is this: be wary of people that have these pie-in-the-sky ideas that don't have any research or credibility to back them up. It's easy to get excited about an idea, but then implementing it in a practical way, that's a whole nother story. Educators don't want more work. They don't want another thing. They want their time to be valued. So research not only fuels the why, but it begins to pave a road to the how. Number 3, practicality leads to embracement. It is hard to move any initiative or idea forward if people can't see how it seamlessly aligns with what they already do. The key here is embracement as opposed to buy-in. You shouldn't have to sell better ways to do things. That is a short-term fix. We are not salespeople. How you show value. You want to create the conditions where people will change. Think about this. You don't change people. You don't change behavior. You influence it. And one of the most productive, valuable ways to influence it is a work towards embracement, not buy-in. If it's not practical, the drive to implement new ideas and practices wanes or never materializes. Number 4, evidence provides validation. The only way to determine if goals have been met is through evidence. To discount this shows a lack of understanding as to what real change looks and feels like in not only education, but any field. Evidence can come in many forms, but in the end, it should clearly paint a picture that the ideas and strategies implemented have resulted in a better, more improved outcome. A combination of data and artifacts will tell you and anyone else whether or not goals were met. Talk is cheap, everybody. I don't want to hear what you're doing. I want you to show me, because I'm an opportunist. I want to take your ideas, give you credit, and use them with other leaders and organizations and teachers and show what actually works. Number 5, accountability ensures success. What's measured gets done, plain and simple. Accountability is prevalent in every profession, and it's not something that should be feared or loathed in education. The key is to establish protocols, checkpoints, check-ins, drop-ins, walkthroughs, observations, evaluations, portfolios that ensure everyone is doing their part and is providing feedback on the way leading to accountability for growth. The A word is not bad in education, but a key is accountability for growth, not an I gotcha. And finally, number 6, reflection propels growth. When we think about the last question that I talked about in the strategic planning cycle, I love that question. And that is, how can we improve? Since there's no perfection in education, this is a question we should always be asking and reflecting on. As John Dewey said, we don't learn from experience. We learn when we reflect on experience. The path to efficacy can be an arduous and frustrating journey. No one likes to spend time coming up with goals and associated action plans only to have them not come to fruition. Developing a strategic plan and following through based on the elements that I described in this podcast might help you get there. But staying on the path also requires teamwork, communication, patience, and professional learning. In the end, when success is achieved and efficacy is shown, the journey and time spent are well worth it. I want to thank you all for joining me on this episode of Unpacking the Backpack. And again, if you want to dive a little deeper, be sure to check out my book, Digital Leadership, 2nd edition. And everybody, like always, keep making a difference in education.